All right, ladies and gentlemen, day 18, episode 19, 40 days of 4VKM. And today is a quick one. We're covering another public service announcement. This is the second public service announcement that I did. And it was to let everybody know we are moving to Rumble because YouTube was just censoring the hell out of us, right? All of our good videos, they'd be getting hot. As soon as we'd hit 10,000 views, though, they would nuke it. So YouTube, not a friend back then. Still a little sussy, but we're still there. We're gonna do the podcast as well. But we're also on Rumble. We're also on Telegram, and we're also on X. So there's multiple options out there for you folks to see 4VKM podcast. But if you want the 4VKM videos, all of them, because so many of them were taken off YouTube, you got to go to Rumble, right? So we established the Rumble channel. So it's called Public Service Announcement from 4VKM. We are moving. And then in parentheses, let's get ready to rumble, right? You've heard that phrase before. Let's get ready to rumble. Well, in terms of wrestling goes, there's a movie with David Arquette back in the day, Ready to Rumble. We got the Royal Rumble, which we just had a couple days ago as well. So, Rumble and WWE are kind of synonymous with each other, right? All right, so we're going to get started. So the timestamp on the video is 617. 6 minutes, 17 seconds. And that's basically giving you a clue on when the next 4VKM video was going to come out there. So a little trip there. But the song that we're using is Come With Me by Diddy, right? Or Puff Daddy, as he was known at the time, right? And we start off, we're talking about why are we moving YouTube, right? We talked about the right to censor. We talked about Stevie Richards, Jacob Israel, that helped write a lot of these promos and whatnot. And Stevie Richards has a promo that says, "The truth is staring you right in the face," he says. And when he says that, I'm kind of showing a tweet from WWE on their first shows back with fans, right? So I'm trying to make all these JFK connections through the 4VKM videos, right? Junior pops up a lot in them. And when's the first day that the WWE is going to be back in front of fans? Outside WrestleMania 37, when the fans went back in Tampa. But they went back into the Thunderdome after that WrestleMania, and they didn't have their first show back with fans until July 16th of 2021, right? So they waited all that time, and then July 16th. Wow, what a day to pick there, right? Vince McMahon famously comes out. First person out in front of the crowd, grabs a microphone, and he just says, "Where the hell have you been?" And that's it. Drops the mic, walks back around, right? So he was talking about, obviously, the fans, right? But maybe he was talking about somebody else, too, that has to do with 716. So, WWE is back in front of fans, and I'm showing you some clips of the Conspiracy Horsemen before I went on, right, where they first discovered 4VKM, and they're trying to figure out who's behind it, who's doing it, what does this all mean, right? And it's almost like Stevie, who was the head of the right to censoring people, is like begging for me to get censored here. He's like, how are these videos even up? There's so many copyright stuff on there. I mean, even the news, but the WWE clips. I mean, so how are these videos still up, right? It's almost like he was saying, like, take them down, right? Not saying he was saying that, but it's kind of how I felt, Stevie, when I heard you saying all that. So regardless, I thought it was interesting. That's the right to censor guy, and he's like talking about, hey, why isn't this guy's stuff not censored, right? So it's all good. It's all good. But, at the end of the day, Bin Hameen, he asked me, he goes, what's your secret? How do you not get taken down once I ended up on the show? And, the real reason, in my opinion, Section 107 of the Copyright Act of whatever year that was, 74, 64, something like that. But it's the Copyright Act, Section 107. And in Section 107, it basically lays the groundwork for fair use, for educational purposes and whatnot. So I've kind of always taken that defense there, to say the least. But who knows? Maybe some people are pulling some strings behind the back that, let these videos kind of stay out there. I don't think so personally, because so many of them have been down. X, even still today, doesn't like the phrase 4VKM, right? It's like a shadow banned phrase almost. So I don't know. I don't think anybody's helping. I think these videos are just supposed to come out, and then, you know, as things develop, you guys can go back to the videos. They'll be there, and then people will be able to say, oh, wow, these videos, they had a lot of stuff that happened later on. So, Section 107, there you go, another 17 right there, right? But I show you all the other channels as Stevie's talking about, you know, how in this promo in WWE back years ago, he's talking about how when politicians get together with the right to censor and they accomplish their goal of censoring all these, you know, horrible things that are in the WWE, I show you guys clips of, you know, kind of some of my favorite channels that were being censored at the time. You know, I think George News was getting it. VK got censored off of Twitter, right? They booted him off of Twitter. Jennifer Mack's channel, right? Space Shot 76's channel. On YouTube. America Prophet, one of my favorite YouTube channels. They nuked them, right? And then I had my own personal experience with it with 4VKM. So censorship was a real thing, and that's why I said, man, if they brought you know, the right to censor back in this era, they'd be the hottest thing out there because everybody would, you know, relate to it, and they'd have so much stuff to go off of today. Now, funny thing is they actually did bring back Ivory in the right to censor gimmick in a Royal Rumble match, and I want to say that was in 2022. So the first Rumble after, they bring Ivory out, and she's in right to censor with the music, right to censor, and she comes out, you know, cutting a promo on how ridiculous the WWE still is. So I thought that was pretty fun. Maybe they saw the videos, right? I also show a character around this time. His name was Karrion Kross, right? He's married to a woman, Scarlett, who's with him on television in WWE. He just came back. He's part of a new group called The Final Testament. That's a fun name, right? So you have Karrion Kross. One of his famous catchphrases that he used is tick-tock. Have you ever heard of that before? Right? And he uses an hourglass, and his girl will flip the hourglass on people and let them know that time is running out, right? So show you a little bit about that. Scarlett one time even came out wearing makeup at one of the shows, and TikTok was written on her face. So it's in your face, literally, right? So we moved to Rumble because, you know, Rumble's the home of free speech. I have not had one video taken down on Rumble, so I appreciate that. We're, you know, over almost 1.3 million views on Rumble with all the 4VKM episodes. So they've been fantastic. Big fan of them. I think we actually do more numbers now on Rumble than we do on YouTube because YouTube doesn't like getting the word out, unfortunately. And they do their best to kind of suppress the videos. Even these ones, they can't take them down for any copyright, which is usually their excuse, right? Sometimes I don't get an excuse. Sometimes it's not copyright, and they say, you know, they just don't like the stuff I'm talking about or showing in the videos. So, you know, it's interesting to say the least, but we don't have those problems on Rumble. We don't have those problems on Telegram either. So I also show you, I talked about this in one of the episodes. This is the first time I show it in 4VKM. Eric Toller, right? You know, he's one of those, I think he was a disinformation reporter or something like that, right? Because all the other disinformation reporters follow him, and like they're like all in a club, right? Like my boy Donnie, right, from CNN, Donnie. And, you know, so we have Eric Toller. He has a screenshot from an account which got censored, deleted off there. It was called, I think, No Context QAnon. And it was a screenshot of one of my tweets talking about how Trump and Vince McMahon at WrestleMania, and the hat, the fedora hat, the day after, and Vincent Fusca, you know, wears a fedora hat, da-da-da. And so he's kind of making fun of it. He's saying, like, oh, this is my favorite subplot right now for QAnon. The guy that's trying to convince people that WWE storylines have been showing you all of it. And, you know, Vince, JFK Jr. and Trump are all working together to take down the sickos. Well, thank you for getting that out there, Eric Toller. I really appreciate it. Ben Collins, like I mentioned, he responds to it, and he says, oh, well, that's not the craziest thing I've ever heard. That's actually probably one of the most sound you know, reasoning. And I replied, thanks, man. Check out 4vkm.com. And then he replied back, no, it's insane. It's still insane, regardless, right? So he doesn't have an open mind, that Ben Collins. But we already know that, and we already know why that is. There's a funny episode with Ben Collins later on, one of the Crown Jewel episodes. So he plays a good part in all this as well. We need people like Ben Collins, right? Speaking to the normies and dropping these little nuggets in there about, oh, QAnon, and they think JFK, and da-da-da-da, right? You know, you need those people because they're ultimately, whether they know it or not, they're seeding the public consciousness. So, hey, keep it going, fellas. Nice job. You guys are doing a great job, in my opinion. Especially when it came to telling about like the whole bloodline thing and all that stuff. There's a whole other episode on that, so I can't wait for it. I also show you a clip of Jim Cornette, right? Jim Cornette was a writer in WWE. He was a manager in WWE. He, used to work hand in hand with Vince McMahon back in the day. And he was a commentator as well, I believe. And, so you have Jim Cornette is in a feud with Dave Meltzer, who he's a stiff. We've shown him in a couple videos, right? Captain Obvious, we like to call him. And, so they're in a little back and forth fight, Dave Meltzer and Jim Cornette. And at this point, I actually took Dave Meltzer's side on the situation, right? And I said, you know what, Dave? I stand with you because Jim Cornette needs to be taught a lesson, something along these lines. He's got such a foul mouth, right? Which he does. He swears a lot. I swear too, but I don't swear like Jim Cornette does. In which Jim Cornette responded on 2/9/2021, F you, Andrew. So not really noteworthy, except I couldn't help it putting it in there because what's the timestamp on his tweet? It's 10:07, right? So you get another 17 right there. Thank you, Jim. You probably didn't even realize what you did, but really appreciate that tweet, to say the least. So, I get asked on the Conspiracy Horsemen by GGP, I talked about this, do you think that JFK Jr. is alive? And I say yes. I think, with probably a 90% chance he's alive. And I know that's tough for a lot of people that still don't understand it. I feel bad for anybody that knew them, that knew Carolyn, that knew her sister Lauren. These people left, right? Now, it's still a possibility that they all perished in the plane crash. I'm not going to say that wasn't a possibility, right? But what I will say is all my years of watching wrestling, following all this stuff that we've been following, researching it deep in myself, it does seem like they've left plenty of stuff, even in George Magazine, that points to an operation that, that they're still around, right? Now, unfortunately, for the people who are close to those people, they had to go away and leave your life. And that's not easy. And I know, it probably sucks when people like me bring it up. But at the end of the day, I have a story I have to tell as well. And it's all of these comms and theories that have kind of webbed themselves together to kind of show an alternative theory to what the mainstream narrative is about there being a plane crash on 7/16, 1999. And what was the thing that they tried to say about JFK Jr.? They tried to say that he was a bad pilot. He didn't know what he was doing. He shouldn't have been flying. He didn't have enough experience, all that stuff, right? And what was the official cause of death, or at least the cause of the plane crash? They said it was the fact that he had spatial disorientation, right? So spatial disorientation, I showed this in another video, one of the older videos. I might not have touched on it though. And, spatial disorientation is when you lose your horizon basically, and then you don't know what essentially direction. It's dark at night, so you can't see the horizon, you can't see, the sky. And when it's all dark at night, the ocean's dark, the sky is dark. So you don't even know if you're in a nosedive, heading right into the ocean, right? So that's what they say happened. He had spatial disorientation, lost control of the plane, went into the ocean, and then it sets up this perfect narrative. Oh, he was inexperienced. He didn't know what he's doing. He shouldn't have been doing this. He was reckless Kennedy. That they still run with today. So remember the phrase "release the Kraken." that Sidney Powell said during the 2020 election. Release the Kraken was the name of a program in the military. And what did Release the Kraken focus on? It was focused on solving spatial disorientation. And well, again, that was the cause of the plane crash, right? So JFK Jr.'s plane crash, to be specific. So they have this machine called the Kraken that basically shakes up simulates a shaking up cockpit and, release the Kraken. Spatial disorientation. Just a coincidence, but I figured I would throw that in for you guys, right? So then they show one of my favorite guys in this whole story. It's Jay Johnson. Jay Johnson's a business owner. I forget what state he's in. I want to say somewhere out in the Midwest, maybe Indiana. I don't remember what state it was, right? But Jim Johnson gets interviewed on Newsmax. He gets interviewed on Newsmax, which they like to put some stuff out there, right? So he kind of became famous because he had a giant Trump flag, right? And then the city said, you got to take this down. It's too big. And they wanted him to take it down. He refused to take it down. So then it kind of became a news story, right? But then he took it to another step further. He took that flag down and he put up an even bigger flag. This flag, think of the dimensions. It was 40 by 60, right? 40 feet by 60 feet. So you have a 46 right there, which is interesting. VKM is 46 in gematria, which I think is cool. And then it reminds me of Vincent Crypt 46 as well. You got a 46 in there. And I'm not saying that VK is Vince McMahon. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying you have a nice little sync there. What are the odds? VKM is 46, and that's the last two numbers in VK's, X account, right? So it's a sync, we like to call it, a sync. So you have Jay Johnson. He's got his flag, right? But this isn't just your standard Trump flag. This is a Trump JFK Jr. flag. 2020, where we go one, we go all. And the guy on Newsmax reads it. He goes, you have a different flag. It's where we go one, we go all. What does this mean? And he explains what it means. I show you a clip of General Flynn. Remember, General Flynn did the oath, right? He did the oath, the Pledge of Allegiance, I think it was, or whatever the people were doing at that point in time. And everybody kind of associated General Flynn with Q at that point. He's kind of changed his tune on that. I think that's for a specific reason. I think that's for optics, personally. A lot of people aren't sure about him. I still haven't seen anything. I mean, I've seen what people have put out there, but at the end of the day, I think, again, everybody plays a role in this whole situation, and we'll see what happens with General Flynn. But General Flynn goes on television, and he mentioned, they asked him about, why did you say that, where we go one, we go all? And he said, well, that was a phrase on JFK's boat. Oh, interesting, right? Now, Jay Johnson, in the same interview on Newsmax, they ask him, hey, what does this mean, right? And he says, it was on JFK's PT boat. Now, I don't know. Maybe Jay Johnson saw the 4VKM videos, because I think I was the first person that I can recall that really interjected the PT 109 into the Q storyline, if you want to call it. And why was that again? Because JFK saved a guy named McMahon, and this whole thing is about a guy named McMahon on my side, right? So it was newsworthy to put that in. It was also 109 years later, after the founding of the U.S. corporation, that Vince McMahon would found his corporation, right? And it was 10 years after that Patrick McMahon, it was reported in the news that he passed away on 2/21/1990. He passed away a couple days before that, but it was in the newspaper, 2/21/1990. 10 years after that date, 119 years later after the founding of the corporation. Interesting. So, Flynn explains where he mentions it's on the boat. Jay Johnson said it was on the PT boat. I haven't seen anything to confirm that. So it's fun. Now, if you go to JFK Presidential Library, one of his boats is outside, and at the top of that boat, there's like a mast, and at the mast there's a bell, and the bell was always ringing with the noise. It kind of looks like where we go all bell from the picture you see, but I think that picture is from a movie, White Squall, I think. I could be wrong with that. But, you know, so you can't see an encryption, but it's interesting to say the least. So what happens, right? We have, speaking of the PT-109, there's a replica of the PT-109, and when I found that photo of the replica, what's the date on that picture? The bottom right corner, I showed in the video. The date that picture was taken was in 2008, 7/16. Wow. Which is the mirror of 617, the timestamp of the video. So you have the boat, the PT-109 replica boat, right? You have 7/16 right there. And we all know what happened on 7/16/1999. Now, who was the president on 7/16/1999? It was Slick Willie, right? And at the same time, who was running for the U.S. Senate in 2000, the next year? For New York, it was going to be Hillary Rodham Clinton, the First Lady. She was starting to run her political career, right? So she's going from First Lady, she starts running, and in 2000 she wins. As Slick Willie's on his way out, Hillary's on her way in to the U.S. Senate, right? Now, as the legend goes, you know, there were polls out ahead of time that basically declared JFK Jr. the front runner for that Senate seat if he decided to run. He never announced and said he was going to run. And then you hear different reports. President Trump, for example, says he was going to run for the Senate, I believe. Other people think that he was going to run for governor of New York, right? But regardless, what are the odds that, you know, this plane crash happens and then he can't run for Senate at that point, right? And, you know, who gets in? It's Hillary, right? It wasn't, you know, Cuomo. It wasn't, you know, Rudy Giuliani, Pataki. It wasn't anybody like that, right? It had to be Hillary Clinton, who has this reputation of disappearing people, right? So, yeah. But what's interesting about that, and I show you the drop, the POTUS, JFK Jr. friendship, the start, Hillary, Senate run, 1999, enjoy the show, something along those lines. And President Clinton, as he's talking about the search, he says, these people are doing as well as any humans can. So I thought that was interesting. Wow, that's a interesting choice of words to say when people are missing at sea. And then you have Congress, right? I don't know who the dinosaur was who was reading this at Congress, but he says a prayer to open the session. And in that prayer, in that session, he basically says he's going to speak about them in the present tense, regardless of the outcome. You know, regardless of the outcome, they are alive and well. And he's talking about with you, Lord, right? So they are alive and well with you, Lord, right? But listen to the way he says it. It's very interesting. Again, very interesting choice of word. You had President Clinton say something like that, and then you had the guy in Congress opening prayer like that. Now, you could just say they were being optimistic or whatever the case be, but it is interesting to say the least, right? So going back to General Flynn, he's at a town hall, something that he's doing. You know, he's taking questions from the crowd. And, you know, I love these guys that ask these questions, right? This guy stands up. He goes, is JFK Jr. alive, right? And go look at the reaction of the people in the room. They go nuts. They're like, yeah, great question. Thanks for asking, right? People applause, right? Everybody starts laughing. General Flynn kind of freezes up. The host of the event is like, oh, geez, you want to answer this? You want to answer this, General Flynn? You know, you can punt it if you want. You can punt it if you want. And General Flynn just responds back. He says, he's not at Mar-a-Lago. Didn't say yes, didn't say no. He just said he's not at Mar-a-Lago, right? Now, what's interesting is, you know who is at Mar-a-Lago a lot? Juan O'Savin. He tells stories about it all the time. You know who else has been at Mar-a-Lago? George News, whoever's running those channels, because they would ping themselves on Telegram from Mar-a-Lago, right? So you have to be there to be able to do that. So it's very interesting, right? So he's not there. He's not at Mar-a-Lago, right? I think not equals yes in gematria as well. Not saying General Flynn's using gematria like that, but you never know, right? Sometimes you use it without knowing you're using it at the end of the day. So what else do we show you? We show you the paparazzi, right? The paparazzi was all over John and Carolyn. You see clips about how Carolyn was concerned about it because of what happened with Princess Diana, ultimately leading to her death, right? You see the paparazzi always getting scenes of them fighting in New York, right? And President Trump alluded to this in one of his interviews, the letters to Trump, where he talks about Junior and Carolyn, and he says they were always fighting like cats and dogs, right? So cats and dogs, I thought it was an interesting phrase to use. Looked it up in gematria. Cats and dogs equals 107. What are the odds of that, right? It's like everything equals 107. Not really, but the military does. Joseph Biden does. Castle Rock does. Apprentice does. McIntyre does. Yeah, there's a lot, but we'll end it there. So Princess Diana, they're talking about that. I show you, National Enquirer. When you think about paparazzi, you think of National Enquirer. That's David Pecker. Remember, David Pecker was a partner in George Magazine, George News, right? And if you look at Dr. Stephen Greer, I think is his name, he tells you that for the most part, the paparazzi, or those National Enquirer magazines, those are generally the publications that tell the truth, right? But people just think it's so ridiculous that they just dispel it as rumors and whatnot. There's been like a million covers like that from those type of publications that talk about JFK Jr. faking his death. So is it truth? Is it fiction? I guess time will tell, right? But going back to Princess Diana. Princess Diana had a secret rendezvous with JFK Jr. and I want to say it was 1995. They met up in New York, right? And nobody really knows what that was about. But what's interesting about all of that, obviously we know what happened with Diana 2 years later in 97. We know what happened with Junior 2 years later after that in 99. We've talked about in the past, JFK Sr., he's buried underneath a Q as far as the pavement goes. And if you look at an aerial site of Princess Diana's gravesite, very similar. You have a pavement of a Q over her grave as well. Michael Jackson also has something on the Neverland Ranch that kind of looks like a Q, but we'll save that for another day. At the very least, you have JFK in a Q and you have Diana in a Q. And yeah, it's very, very interesting. So what else? What else we got on my notes here? I got notes now, so I don't miss anything because there's a lot of stuff going on, right? Dan Scavino. I haven't ever really talked about him, but remember a couple episodes ago where I think it was the RBG episode. We are ruthless, right? Ruthless aggression in the Digital Thunderdome. We showed the cowboy in the black hat, and it turns out that cowboy, he made his appearance on 2/21/2020, which was the same day 4VKM came out. So that kind of blew my mind when I found that out recently. I didn't know that. But anyway, Dan Scavino, he posts a Trump rally, hype video, right? And the start of the video is our friend, the black cowboy, right? The black hat cowboy, side panel or side profile shot of him, and he's at the rally, the same rally that we showed you in the previous video. Now, Dan's used this video a couple times, and everybody asks, who's that guy in the beginning of the video, Dan? And he doesn't answer, but the last time he used it that I can recall him using it, it was for the rally that just took place in Miami a couple months ago. And if you remember at that rally, Roseanne Barr spoke. And if you remember at that rally also, who was with Roseanne Barr in the background, you had Juan O'Savin, right? So Juan O'Savin, he's on with, I'm going to try to say the name right, Nicholas Veniamo. I think I got it right. I might not have. We'll just call him Nick V. Nick V, big fan of his work. He's not afraid to ask any questions, and he has Juan O'Savin on, and he asks him, he goes, is JFK Jr. alive? And Juan takes a pause. He pauses for a moment, and he goes, enjoy the show. So that's like my favorite phrase. I used to close out the show every day. So Juan doesn't say no again. He never says no. They never say no. He just says enjoy the show, right? So, we wrap things up with our boy Jay Johnson, and he's making this comparison with Trump and JFK Jr. and saying, when the time is right, you roll him out as the vice president. And, that will unite everybody. And, it's like Batman and Robin type of situation. And the guy on Newsmax kind of laughs at it and whatnot, right? And it ends up like that, right? So now, what's the talk? Dan Scavino, speaking of him, he just posted yesterday, who do you think real Donald Trump's VP should be? And I had posted one of our 4VKM videos saying it should be Junior. And it was a very popular post, to say the least. And if you go look at the other comments and some of the other stuff that's being said, whenever that question gets asked, that's probably like the number one answer people give, right? I put a post up yesterday on X. It was, which Kennedy will Trump choose as his VP, right? Because the news came out yesterday as well, coincidentally, that Trump was considering, or he had reached out to Robert Kennedy at the beginning of the campaign. He reached out to Robert Kennedy about being his VP. Now, RFK has publicly said he wouldn't do it, but this article from the New York Post said basically, don't rule it out. It hasn't been ruled out yet. So I said, which person is going to be VP, right? Is it going to be, which Kennedy is going to be VP? Is it going to be RFK Jr.? Is it going to be Vincent Kennedy McMahon, which everybody said, he just got accused. Why would you say that? Da, da, da. Right? Or would it be JFK Jr.? And, the overwhelming, again, response people want was JFK Jr. I challenge Dan, Trump, any of the big accounts out there, run a poll and put that guy's name on it and see who wins. I guarantee you this guy will win hands and fists over anybody else. So it's fun, to say the least. And don't forget, what was the purpose of this video? It was to let people know we're moving from YouTube to Rumble, right? We are moving. In 2005, the WWE moved for a little bit off of USA. And they went to, or actually they were moving back to USA, I think. So they were on Spike TV. They were moving back to USA Network. And they did this whole commercial with Vince McMahon and the wrestlers about how they're moving, right? We are moving, right? And how does that scene end? It ends with Triple H in the back seat saying, and Vince is driving the car, and Triple H says, are we there yet? Right? So that's kind of the question that everybody else has. Are we there yet? It seems like we're getting closer, and it seems like, as crazy as our theories have been over the last 4+ years, it doesn't seem like they've been ruled out mathematically yet, right? It's just people want to hang on to that fact that that plane crash happened on 7/16, and there's no convincing them otherwise that it didn't happen, because the entire mainstream media has reported it to have happened, right? And everybody's gone along with it. So I get it. It's hard to dispute events, especially when there is a loss of life that's involved in it, but you got to show all sides of the stories. And if there is, things to be considered and to look at, and if there's a hope that these people are alive, the people that care about those people, they should be optimistic like we all are as well, and hope that happens. So, at the very least, it's a revenge tour, and all of this stuff is happening to get payback for what happened on 7/16, if that plane crash did happen. You can interpret that drop, the start, Trump POTUS, or Trump JFK Jr. Friendship, right? You could assume that the start was when the plane crash happened, because Trump knew they took his friend out, right? So it's all possible at the end of the day. But like I said, I give it a 90% chance. I think over the last couple weeks, I've gone up to maybe 95, right? I'm almost like the APL on VK's profile, right? I'm almost there. So we'll see what happens, folks. But at the very least, as always, check out the video on Rumble. public service announcement from 4VKM. We are moving. Let's get ready to rumble. All the episodes are there on Rumble. Don't forget to subscribe to the 4VKM podcast. That's coming out on 2/21, 2024. We're going to be able to talk about a lot of good stuff on that, have some people on that have some different points of views, different perspectives, and go from there. And 4VKM.com, so you can check all the other episodes that are out there. And as always, ladies and gentlemen, just like Juan O'Savin said, just like how that drop ended, enjoy the show.